just reclaiming the kitchen as the cornerstone of your household is something that people can take home from this, where it's like the kitchen is a screen-free place. The kitchen is a place, maybe exception if a child has to work on the island with their laptop and they're doing homework and they want to be present while you're cooking. Fine. But I'm talking device social. Like this is a place where we have fresh flowers, a record player, and we have peace. We're cultivating peace in our household here. And we're putting time and energy and desire into being here. We're not disdaining the dishes in the sink. We're not, I hate being in the kitchen, because we have to model joy in the process. It has to be desirable, just like mom's eating her broccoli to show that that's good. It's the same way in how we want to spend our time and energy in our home.
Corey, it is so hard to find quality bread these days. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. We learned so much when we did that whole recording on grains. We learned what bread should be and what it shouldn't be. And it's definitely hard to find bread made the right way. But we have found Serenity Farm Bread, which is a bread company doing things the right way. They are making old world sourdough bread, and they are baking it in a wood-fired brick oven.
Their loaves are properly prepared, free of seed oils, no gums, no conditioners, no weird, funky ingredients. And Corey and I especially enjoyed the sourdough and focaccia loaves.
Go to serenityfarmbread.com and use the code MAM10, MAM10, for 10% off. They ship all over the U.S. Enjoy a delicious slice of focaccia bread for us.
Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, two millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. One of our favorite conversations on the MAM podcast is nutrient density. I feel like we talk about it a lot. And the importance of nourishing our kids well, especially in this world inundated with processed foods. But Corey and I are constantly asked by our listeners and followers on Instagram, how do you do that? And what are the best ways to feed kids nutrient-dense foods? So we decided to bring on an expert to answer all of your burning questions related to that topic. So today, please welcome Allie Miller. She is passionate about nutrient-dense foods and using food as a tool for healing. Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas, Allie.
Thank you. I'm stoked to be here.
So, I want to say congratulations to you, because you just had your book come out yesterday as of right or today.
Yeah.
It came in the mail for me today. I literally got it like 30 minutes before we were starting to record. I had wanted to be able to flip through it before we got on, but I was like, didn't really give me enough time to really flip through it. But congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So we will have plenty of time to talk about that. But if anybody needs it really quickly, it's called Naturally Nourished Kids, and you can get it, at all the book places.
Absolutely.
All right. So we start the show off usually with a roundtable questions, kind of icebreaker, get us going on the conversation. And today's question is, how do you get your kids to eat foods that are rich in nutrients, but are not always their favorites?
Okay. So I have a twofold answer for this. We have an entire section in Naturally Nourished Kids called Being a Taste Adventurer. And part of this is opening the palate up and creating more willingness to create less stress and drama at the dinner table, of course. And I kind of take it as like a two-part. There's the, let's say, good cop, bad cop kind of thing, right? So there's the consistency and clear expectation side, which is maybe like the little bit more staunch, hard, direct, and I can unpack that further, paired with the idea that all people of all ages, children included, want to be heard and understood, right? So if we create a partnership with our children and we actually go at it with a place of empowerment and understanding of their likes and dislikes, and a partnership of actually caring to understand what they didn't like about said food or why they don't prefer it, educating them on why we would like them to consume it, ideally connecting to one of their hooks. So it's a teenager, she's stressed out about her acne, or it's a football player, he wants to get his gains with a Z at the gym. It's a toddler and, he wants to be strong like dad. So wherever we are on that spectrum, when we can connect our kids at all ages to their hook and explain the why children are incredibly intelligent and intuitive. And then if we work with them on the rejection and partner with them on a way that they'd be more willing. So let's say, for instance, it's broccoli. And, we're talking to our kids about, hey, I really would like you. The reason why I'm cooking broccoli today is because it's super potent in antioxidants. And, remember when we cut that apple and we saw that the apple was browning and we put the lemon juice on it and we showed that example of how antioxidants actually reduce oxidative stress and what that means. So we've already instilled that through that experiment. They've seen visual, they've understood how antioxidants shield and protect their bodies. Well, broccoli has this really unique one. You know how it can kind of smell like farts, that sulfur in there? That's actually a protective compound that is going to help your cells against all of the toxins, against pollution, against this and that. And this is the reason why I'd like you to be willing to try and consume it. So I see you didn't like what we served last night. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the texture, the appearance, and the taste, and break it down. It's not yuck. It's not no. It's not rejection without information. And then we use that information with them in a conversation, and we decide together how we would be willing to try it again. So I know that you really like the crispy cauliflower that we do with the turmeric. I saw that you said that the texture of the broccoli is too soggy. What if we use that recipe, but try with broccoli instead of the cauliflower? Would you be willing to try it? And then that following week, when you serve it, it's like, hey, John, hey, Caden, I made your special broccoli. They have autonomy, ownership. They're seen, they're heard. They feel like we just did something so special for them. And there's going to be a lot more willingness for them to participate, even doubled down, if you get them involved in that culinary process. And you say, hey, can you break the broccoli florets with me? Can you pour the olive oil? Can you sprinkle on the sea salt? Can you turn on the oven light and watch it roast and tell me when you think it's crispy enough? So getting them involved in the process, meeting them where they're at and understanding the why not, and educating them on the whys are like the soft part of it. And then the other part of it that I think is equally important is that consistency and clear expectations. And in that sense, it's that we don't become a short order cook. We are disempowering our children if we are not expanding their palates to savory and bitter and alkaloid rich flavor profiles. And so to just make them that siete quesadilla every Friday, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, because it's easy and they'll eat it. Sure, it's not as inflammatory as fast food, but they're not getting the zinc in the bison meatballs. They're not getting the heme iron. They're not, and so there's reasons for eating in diversity. And if we let our child drive a hard no or a staunch I won't without trying to pause, understand, and troubleshoot, then we're just kind of sinking into that disempowerment with them.
Yeah.
I was like, did I answer it? I kind of forgot.
No, that was amazing. There's so many pieces of that I feel like we could unpack. And it was perfect. You talked about consistency, which is something that Corey and I discuss all the time. You mentioned already you cook the broccoli one week and you're going to serve it again the following week.
15 times it can take for
totally.
acceptance.
I know it takes a while. I have a story about that. So my oldest he's 11 and has always disliked oysters. Hated them to the point where he says they make him gag, and they really do. I have seen him gag trying to eat oysters, but I keep feeding them. The catch here is we live in Texas, landlocked. Okay. We don't really have access to a lot of fresh oysters. Let's be honest. So they've always been canned oysters. They've been canned smoked oysters, which is a very particular flavor profile.
Yes.
And this past summer we went to Maine and we ate tons of fresh oysters. And for the first time he tried fresh oysters and he was blown away and he loved them.
Like minerality.
Yes. He was like, okay, now I know. It's not that I don't like oysters. It's that I don't like the canned oysters, the smoked oysters. I love fresh oysters, which is better anyway. So, cool. But that's it. And that's the thing. Like, I could have given up and been like, oh, he doesn't like oysters, so we're not going to let him try any.
Right.
And instead, no, we kept saying, I know that you say you don't like oysters, but you really should try these. These are different. They taste different. And sure enough, consistency pays off, folks.
It does. And when we're talking protein, oysters are an abstract, for sure, food, nature's multivitamin, an awesome nutrient option. Yes. But if it's like meatballs, if it's like steak, if it's like paleo chicken tenders, and they reject it, part of the consistency means next time they're hungry, oh, look what I have out of the fridge for you. There's those, and it's like, it is because again, if it's a simple protein and not super fringe, I never do that with vegetable. Vegetable, we just try to recreate. But
Yeah.
protein jags, I mean, the importance of protein for cognition and mental health is just really essential that we figure out how to nail protein with our kids.
Yeah, and so many kids have an aversion to it, which is just fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
They do. I feel like that could be another rabbit trail that we go down because yes, there's so many kids that are picky about protein.
Okay, let's put a tack in that one, and then because I want
Corey, you pin it.
Pin it. Put a pin in it. Sorry, I could not remember what that phrase was. But I want Allie to give a little bit of background on totally. Why she's at where she's at. But I definitely also want you to tell us how many kids you have and how old they are. So people get a good reference to what your life experience is.
Yes.
Sure. So I have one child. She's 9. Her name is Stella. And then this book is co-authored with Becky Yu, and she has an 11-week-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So collectively, we've gone through kind of all the ages and stages. Yes, this book has been in the works for more than 5 years for sure. Becky and I started working together in 2014, and she was my food photographer and food blogger. And the idea then was I had a brick and mortar in Houston, Texas, and I wanted to have a weekly food as medicine recipe for my patients. And so we wanted to work with abstract produce. I had done some volunteering at the farmer's market, and that's kind of how I built my brand. I would have like sunchoke slaw and how inulin is a prebiotic fiber. And I would kind of work with these fringe kind of outside the box produce items like kohlrabi, et cetera, and trying to teach people how to culinarily approach them and how they can also equally be food as medicine. And so I started to have her do that as I was really in the functional medicine clinical world of work. And then she photographed my first book, Naturally Nourished, which came out in 2015. And then I wrote the anti-anxiety diet in 2018. And then she photographed the anti-anxiety diet cookbook for me in 2019. And on the tail of that tour, we did a West Coast tour. We were going to do an East Coast tour, March of 2020, right?
Totally.
Yep. I was newly pregnant, and we're walking around my neighborhood. And this was actually before the bad season, before like things came crashing down. Things were still happening. And I said, she's like, well, what's next, girl? And I was like, what's next is you're going to co-author a book with me, and it's going to be a kid's nutrition book because you're more type A than I am. And you're like obsessed about all of the super baby growing and all of the things. And, I had already done some blogs on baby-led weaning and breast milk as nature's perfect food. And, some of these elements with Stella at that time was 3.5. And so, it was that perfect timing to kind of stoke the fire. And, now when it came out, there's 4 children in the making. And, they're in this book. So the strawberry collagen lemonade was Stella's 4th birthday party, pink princess tea party lemonade. And the zucchini fritters were the appetizer for her 2nd birthday. And, one of her toddler ways of getting veg was to do fritters. We would shred veg into, egg cakes, very easy way for delivery. Noah, Becky's oldest, who's 5's bone broth blueberry smoothie made it in our SIPs chapter. And Mabel's Greek yogurt paleo waffle, which is like her comfort blanket. She, from 18 months on until 2.5, had a waffle in her hand, I swear. And Becky made them in batch. And so for postpartum, I think like half of her breast milk was paleo waffles. And so that was amazing. And, they're integrated here. Poor Otto doesn't have a recipe yet because, he's just noted as baby number 3 in the book.
Yeah.
He'll come in the next one, I'm sure.
Hadn't come around quickly enough.
Yeah.
So wait, really fast, because you are a registered dietitian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, and most of our listeners know by now that the registered dietitian program leans more conventionally towards USDA guidelines, et cetera.
Yeah.
So how on earth do you move from there to where you are today?
Well, I didn't start there. And I think that's a big part of it. So yes, the field of RDs, the registered dietitian credentials actually were funded heavily by General Mills. And so, that states a lot. all mainstream medicine has pretty nefarious funding, so if we're talking about medical schools being funded by pharma, same type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I went to Bastyr University, which is a naturopathic college of medicine. And so that's where I started my training. I actually worked as a hospital diet technician preceding that to like see worst case scenario. I knew I did not want to be a hospital dietitian, but I was like, what does that look like? At that time, I was vegetarian becoming vegan, and it was, just very ultra processed, of course, and disturbing. And so I went to Bastyr out in Washington, food as medicine focused. And actually, John Bastyr was a vegetarian. So I was like, oh, this is great. And then very early on, learned through a diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis and anemia from the Vital Wheat gluten I was consuming, the tofu, all of the isolates that are quite gut distressing, and nutrient deficiencies from not eating animal-based foods. I was in the same clinic that I was working as a student clinician in as a patient. And I was diagnosed with anemia. My ferritin level was a 4, single digits. You can't regrow hair until it's over 60, right? So serious anemia, which can drive really bad brain fog. I was having panic attacks, the elephant on the chest type symptoms. And my TPO, which is your thyroid peroxidase level, was off the charts. And, the clinician's like, here, in honoring your vegetarian diet, here's your list of, vegetarian and vegan iron foods. And I'm like, I just learned, though, about heme versus non-heme iron.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, thinking that maybe, and so it was a little bit of a recalibration. And in the anti-anxiety diet, I actually use this mantra that I use to date, and I continue to redefine my relationship with food, because otherwise I would be stagnant and boring. But, it was doctrine creates disconnect. And I think when you become too indoctrinated with a label of your diet, you lose the innate connection of the feedback of your body. And I have recalibrated this through various stages of my life, like being too tight, for instance, into nutritional ketosis, and then saying, ooh, I need some metabolic flexibility because I'm seeing that I'm now getting a little agitated or bitey. And so we need to be mindful when we're using food as medicine, and when we're new or very passionate about food as medicine or a therapeutic diet, that we know that food changes with season, and as should we. And when we get too rigid or staunch, we can sometimes kind of close off the feedback of the body and then lose out on the synergies of diversity that we need in the diet. So very early at that time, I decided I have to eat meat. Actually, oysters were my first animal food out in the Pacific Northwest. Like I pulled it out of the beach and shucked it. And it was like real deal. Like, let's go.
That's so primal.
Yeah,
that is. You're like, if I'm going to eat meat, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it
raw
myself.
egg yolks in my green smoothies, and then one day my husband says I was cramming for a biochem exam, and like a cartoon character, he was making a ribeye, and like a cartoon character, I like levitated in, and he turned around and half the steak was gone. And yeah, it was that, So,
ribeyes have that effect on people, though, I will say.
Yes.
I will literally do the same thing.
You know why? There's a compound in red meat called anandamide, and it is a cannabinoid. So, we're wired with an endocannabinoid system.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, like we make CBD. We have high amounts of CBD in our breast milk. But, we have an endocannabinoid receptor system, and anandamide in red meat has that like bliss factor. It has a total, I can salivate just talking about it.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's a brain buzz for sure. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that it had that compound in it. Mm-hmm. How do you say it again?
Anandamide.
Anandamide. Yeah. I'm going to remember that.
Wait, okay. So this is totally off the rails, but do you know why then because you could have that response to a ribeye, right? But I'm not going to have that same response to like ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good
What's
point.
That about?
Okay, so that opens. We can go into like chew.
We're just like go down all the rabbit holes.
Sure. Well, so chew. So there is anandamide in red meat, but anytime like a ground meat is processed, right? It's not as much of a whole real food, and so when we start that process of grinding it, we're creating more oxidation, and we are going to be breaking down nutrients or depleting nutrients at that time because we're mechanically breaking it up, right? So we're creating exposure to oxygen that reduces some of that nutrient density. And then furthermore, on the like eating experience, when we have to use our mandible more, and I actually have a whole section in the book about this, which I think, let's just talk about it. When we have to use our mandible and we chew, there are so many different also neurofeedback mechanisms that occur, which would then exacerbate that anandamide experience. So for instance, we get more hippocampal blood flow and oxygenation. So part of the brain, the hippocampus, gets better oxygenation when we chew. We also know that the prefrontal cortex functions better when there's actual mastication or activation in the jaw. And you don't really have to chew ground meat because it's like pre-chewed, right?
Yeah.
We know that that chewing process upregulates CCK, which is a compound that connects that gut-brain bilateral highway, and that gives us satiety signaling. And so, I mean, there's so much there. And then, not to mention why our kids need to chew at lunch versus like suck in the pouches and all the soft stuff. Even if it's a crunch, if it's an ultra processed crunch, it's different, right? So I'm talking like raw carrots, stew meat, steaks, those types of cuts, is that those put us into a parasympathetic space. And so, when we're at school, work, and we're hit with LED lights, there's a lot of Wi-Fi, EMF going on. Our body is in a state of oxidative stress and prone towards excitatory response. And so having that time to shift back from sympathetic fight or flight mode into that parasympathetic with chewing, it actually gives the body that signal, like, it's like plugging back into home base type of thing. And so if kids aren't doing that at their lunches, they're not getting that reset that they need. They might be getting some caloric intake, some nutrients, but that true chew is really essential for optimal mental health.
That is fascinating.
And then not to mention,
I knew the importance of chewing for jaw strength, for palate development, for all of those things, but I hadn't thought so much about all of those other connections that it makes to the brain. And you said oxygenating the hippocampus, like, whoa.
Well, and there was a study that showed eating soft foods can drive atrophy in the hippocampus. So actual like shrinkage in that part of the brain, which is wild. And so, again, as we're seeing oral occlusions, wisdom teeth being removed, sleep apnea, we're seeing all these physical manifestations, but I don't think we've made the mental connections as much as I'm trying to bring to light, because I think it's so important.
Fascinating.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so I feel like we could dive right into baby-led weaning, because the first thing I think of is, oh my gosh, pouches and purees galore, and puffs and yogurt melts and everything that's just like soft in your mouth.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, as I'm like sipping a smoothie as we're talking, the reason being, and this is true, right, is like I can't, not that I'm running from a tiger right now per se, but like I'm more sympathetic. I'm in like go mode. We're talking. I'm all cylinders firing. So this is not a time, like you're never going to eat a ribeye when you're running away from a predator, right? Like, hold on. This is not the priority of survival. And so if we need to fuel during high fight or flight time, there is a space for like nutrient density in soft foods, like cottage cheese with olive oil, tuna salad, that type of stuff, right? But we absolutely need to ensure at least twice a day that we're taking that time to get those dense foods. And yes, at 4 months, the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatricians, are recommending rice cereals and instant oatmeal as first foods. First off, that is generally not an age of developmental readiness. Children at 4 months do not have the head strength, the pincer grip, the neuromuscular development truly. So we find really more waiting till that 6+ month world for a baby-led weaning is often more appropriate. Earlier, if you want for sensory impact, okay. But really waiting till like that 6 month. And instead of giving them these ultra processed refined carbs, which are devoid of nutrients and synthetically enriched, all of those rice cereals and instant oatmeals will have folic acid. So 40 to 60% of the population is MTHFR. Right away, we're starting to work against the neurological system and the detox pathways of that baby by giving them that synthetic folic acid if they are MTHFR, which is a high probability. Whereas if we are making ancestral meatballs and they're getting nature-made folate from liver in some of their first foods, we are giving them an abundance of folate to support that methylation. And so food as medicine is like that. It's like not only do we focus on restriction because of insult, we also focus on abundance to optimize. And, first foods and the idea of baby-led weaning allows more autonomy, allows better motor development skill, allows also more nutrient density for sure, and can prevent glycemic issues because babies in utero make ketones. Breastfed babies are in light nutritional ketosis, and then we just pull the rug out when we give them a high glycemic naked carb. And then the rest, I think we were saying about how kids' palates don't care for meat, is because we've just like high wired their palate to bland and sweet. And it just carries on with the puffs and the other food-like substances that are marketed and sold to parents as first foods. And I think parents have a lot of confusion and anxiety in the introduction of foods. And so they trust what they see to say, oh, well, this is age appropriate. It says it.
Yes.
So that's what I should
totally.
eat. And I think baby-led weaning is really the right way because also it's less work for the parent and it really can create more of a savory palate.
Yeah.
So this is something, go ahead.
No, you go first, Corey.
I was going to say, this is something Christine has a lot of opinions on, thoughts on, experience with, obsession with.
Yeah.
There's at one point she was like, she told me this, I would have like 15 more babies if I could just go through the feeding baby stage at like 6 months old. I think it's hilarious.
It's so
Christine,
much fun
what
for
do you
me.
have to say?
No, I agree with everything you say. And it just makes me laugh. I always chuckle a little bit when we talk about baby-led weaning because we are, both Corey and I started with the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I laugh because Sally despises baby-led weaning. She thinks it's the worst thing ever. And I don't think it's the methodology that she despises. It's just the book. The book itself, she thinks
she
is
does
a terribly...
hate the methodology because she hates the mess of it.
You're right. She doesn't like the mess of it.
She thinks it's too messy.
Yeah. And I think it's just a different generation personally.
Sure.
And I disagree with that. I think that it is one of the best ways to feed babies. But I will say some of the more nutrient dense foods are hard to feed baby-led weaning style. So I'm thinking broth, bone marrow, pate. Those are spoon-fed foods.
Yep. So
it's easy
preloaded spoons is kind of the way to go.
Exactly.
Yes.
I
know that.
Yeah. Preloading
in their ear.
Yeah. Totally.
The dog,
I have never, ever wanted a dog more than when I was feeding infants.
This is when they're the most useful.
They learn real quick to just around that high chair.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Allie, though, what do you think about, because in the baby-led weaning sphere, most people that you come across on the internet will tell you that not to use spicy things, not to add salt, not to have, I don't know, what are some of the other things or
they're on the other end of the spectrum where they're like, you can literally feed them anything. For example, raw
like
carrot,
pizza.
Right? A pizza or like a raw carrot to a 6-month-old, or like
wouldn't be bad because they just suck on it.
I mean, they would, but I wouldn't feed a raw carrot to
You could dip it in pate.
That's true.
But it's like a utensil. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
My kids loved raw carrot, like a big one, not a baby one, because then they could choke on it, but like a giant one, and then they could just gnaw on it, and they liked it when they were teething.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that can occupy a whole grocery store trip, just a good old carrot.
Yeah, exactly. I actually had one kid when she was that age. I wasn't paying attention, and she was sitting in the grocery cart. And next thing I knew, I turned around and she had grabbed an entire head of broccoli and was just eating it in the cart. And I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, it's not organic. It's not washed. It's just been like sitting here. And then I'm like, how am I going to explain this to the cashier when I get up there and she's eating the thing? And I'm like, I don't know how to pay for this. I know it's by weight, but like, what do I do?
It's already gone.
It's done. It's gone. I'll pay double for it, whatever. Like, I don't care.
Oh my goodness.
That's hilarious.
Okay. So like, what do you think? I really want to know about the salt. I think that's the biggest question that I have. What do you think?
Honestly, I think that Lily Nichols does a really fantastic job on her blog with evidence-based information specific to salt and baby-led weaning. So I would defer to her specific recommendations, but I do not worry about, I would never pull salt, especially a complex quality mineral salt, away from a child, even including at that age. We're not going to be giving them multiple teaspoons at a sitting, but I don't understand any reason to keep salt free or to limit salt. If you're creating a dish, again, a meatball, a meatloaf slice, etc., for the family to make a separate element. Now, in the world of like spices and such, there's also that school of thought of like, right, there's both ends of the spectrum, single ingredients, and then there's 100 foods before age one. So it's like, where do I fall? So I think the same with spices and such. And first off, before that, you watch your child, regardless of what food you're introducing first. Skin is, of course, a very good window for gut integrity. And so if your child is dealing with cradle cap, if your child is dealing with eczema or dermatological issues, I always recommend boosting with immunoglobulins in breast milk. So like adding that into a bottle. So pumping with breast milk and adding in immunoglobulins to prime their immune system, because likely they have insufficient immunoglobulins, and that might create more food sensitivity or unfavorable reactivity. I also, when I see indicators of skin stuff, will ensure that we're getting a probiotic that's appropriate for that child prior to solids. So in that sense, when we up their probiotic intake, lactobacillus and a bifido, which also you can open quarter capsule into breast milk. There is some probiotic in breast milk. There are some immunoglobulins, of course, in breast milk. But if we're seeing indicator of need, we do need to kind of amplify that to seal the gut and to support that digestive process before bringing in foreign compounds or higher antigens for then that gut integrity to have to deal with. So just kind of a little trick that we do clinically, preceding that timestamp. And then, I say if you've had a successful, once you're at 10 foods, it's like, let it rip. And, unless you're like seeing a lot of feedback that's unfavorable or constipation or issues with your child, then, it's really just looking at keeping spicy foods out. So we're not creating heartburn, reflux. And again, that's the early stages, but by age, and Becky, my co-author, with her last name Yu, her husband's Korean, and so there's bibimbap. There are Thai sardine cakes in here. There is a kimchi aioli, which my 9-year-old loves, with the crispy squash wedges. And so again, culturally, like Byron always says, he's like, oh yeah, baby's first food is kimchi. It's like, so like kimchi is super spicy and has like 20 ingredients in it, and including fish paste, including, pepper and such. So it's like, I think it's about observing your child and the feedback. But the principles, again, of big picture of savory, protein, nourishing whole fats, I think that's absolutely important.
So on one end you have salt, and on the other end you have sugar. What do you think about sugar and babies?
Yeah.
And when I say babies, I'm going to say like 0 to 2.
Okay. Yeah. So sugar, first off, carbs is kind of a bigger umbrella, because I think my era comes from a lot of the but 0 grams of added sugar. Anytime we demonize a particular food, and this is why I like to generalize and say, hey, in this time era where we're getting a lot of talking heads and influencers talking about the next thing that's going to kill you or your child, it's important to not buy in too much about the worst offenders, because the food marketers and scientists are aware of that messaging and they're one step ahead of us. And guess what that product will say? Free of this. Like we saw that with gluten-free. We see that with the 0 grams of sugar. And so as I say this, I just want to kind of set that tone, right? We're really looking at glycemic index, and definitely there's a big difference of something like sucanat or turbinado, which is like a first pull from sugarcane, which still has the molasses intact, as opposed to like a refined crystallized sugar, which is ubiquitous, in one structure and bleached and refined. And then, of course, a step further would be high fructose corn syrup, which is going to be a hepatotoxin and a stressor to the liver. So, we always start closest to God food, whole, real foods, which are going to have as many edible parts intact and are going to have the least refinement or refining going on. We're going to see the least amount of chemical add-ins or input, and ideally less agricultural input in the process of growing. And then if we're looking at those choices of carbohydrates, we should be getting phytocompounds, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals along with that said food, like actually turbinado and sucanat can have B vitamins intact. So with it being said, we hold off sugar, like Stella's first birthday cake had mashed banana as the sweetener in it. The sweeteners that we use in this book are all whole real foods. So we're talking about raw and filtered honey. We're talking about robust maple. We're talking about dates. We're talking about, we don't even use any granulated. I think we use coconut sugar actually in our birthday blondies. But, generally speaking, we try to keep those granulated added sugars out and use natural phytocompound rich sources of sweetener that, again, when keeping a savory palate, small amounts can pack a big punch. And what's really important is those whole real foods also have other health redeeming properties. So like the raw and filtered honey can help with our microbiome as a prebiotic fiber. We know that honey topically can fight against microbial activity. And so there's benefits to these whole real God foods as opposed to just getting that sugar fix and then that blood sugar spike and crash devoid of nutrients. So I think anytime we're feeding our children, we want to select something that is wholesome, that provides nourishment, not just fills the void.
Yeah.
So, I think, again, at early ages, we use the fruits. And then as we calibrate and we work with, indulgences, baked goods, et cetera, as long as they're coming from whole real foods and we're keeping them very moderate and small portions, that those can be reasonable.
Totally. What are your thoughts on snacking and the whole snacking culture?
Yeah. So snacking can really disrupt hunger and satiety signals. And all too often, that's my first question when someone says, hey, my kid is so picky at dinner. It's what do they eat after school? And so, the first thing that we do when Stella is coming home from school is she'll open her lunch in the car. And she's a social butterfly, like, bless her heart. I get that, girl. Like, if you got stuff to talk about, it's hard to get all your food in, right? And so her first thing is oh, well, let's if you're hungry, let's look in your lunch and see what's there. Oh, okay, well then eat that cheese stick that you didn't have, or have those bell peppers. It's not open free for all of go to the pantry and grab the salty, crunchy things. Because unfortunately, a lot of the snacks that kids have are high glycemic index, not nutrient dense, drive blood sugar dysregulation, and fill without that nutrient density. So then they aren't hungry when we want more of those rich foods for them. So the first thing I do with a picky eater is we say no snacks until they're eating their dinner. And if they are hungry, they can have a little bit of last night's dinner leftovers if we aren't ready for dinner, or a part of the dinner preparation. Like if I'm cutting veg for the bolognese, sure, here's a couple of bell pepper wedges. If we must have some kind of snack, if we feel like they are metabolically sound and they are eating their full plate, absolutely a carb with a protein or healthy fat could work. But we're not presenting snacks unless asked. And if asked, we're thinking about when their last nutrient-dense meal was, how to pack nutrient density into a snack, and how to ensure that they're going to have hunger at mealtime. Otherwise, we're creating ourselves for frustration and, waste at the mealtime.
How do you handle social snacking when, they're at school and they have a school imposed snack time at 10:30, or you're at a play date at, 2:00 in the afternoon and all the kids' moms pull out a bag of goldfish or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Or how do you suggest handling that?
Yeah. So, I think the other thing to make a note, just general about snacking, is that I believe we were designed to be hybrid machines using both glucose and ketones. And so again, kids get robbed of ketones from the early introduction of rice cereal, and then generally don't get a revisitation because we're constantly stimulating insulin by constantly feeding them. It's like, how many moms are snack, snack, snack? They got the snacks in the bag, they got the snacks in the back seat. They got we're worried they're going to starve. And as humans, we literally were designed to have feasting and fasting. And so not to say that you need to intermittent fast your children. I'm not saying that for the record, but I'm also saying don't chronically feed and over insulin drive your children because you're setting them up for metabolic imbalance. So resting from food is, I believe, an essential part of optimal nourishing. So I just want to kind of like set that. Stell's, so I've always been the type A mom, and she's 9 now. And I can kind of tell you how it's evolved with her. So at an early age, it was like when you get the form for school and it asks about allergies, it was a very simple, like, no allergies, but, and then my husband would be like, oh gosh, what's coming, right? I was like, no allergies, but my child, and it used to be like a diatribe that I would write, and then you kind of like soften, you like, from your hard part, you're like, okay, I can get, I want to be an ally to the teachers, not a thorn in their side. But basically I write in the most gentle way possible, do not give my child food. That's what I write. So I say, my child has a very specific whole food diet. And so basically from kinder to first, it was like, if there was a birthday party, I would get a text in advance. I would send her with a snack. Yeah. I even would keep an RX bar, like just the chocolate RX bar, as a backup in case I didn't get notifications. So there was a snack on hand that the teacher could offer my daughter. Honestly, she's in 4th grade now. In 3rd grade, she was like, Mom, you don't have to do that anymore. If I'm hungry, I'll just grab something out of my lunch. And like, I don't usually need something then. So it's like, okay, cool. And she's an awesome kid. Maybe she's a total anomaly, right? We don't know, but that was her vibe there. And then now here we are, she at church, one of her new friends from the new school said, I love sitting by you because I get all of your pass downs, meaning Stell's is like, no thanks. And then the other kids take it. And so she sees it like as a social win. Like the kids like it. They're like, let's sit by Stella because we get her Doritos or we get her goldfish. They don't shame or judge her. They're just like, sweet, extra snack for me. And Stella just opts out. And we're working on the discernment and how to lead with light versus judgment and shame, because that's always my philosophy. Like, I'm going to do me. I would love to cultivate curiosity so you're interested in what we're doing and we can empower you. But I never want people to feel shamed or judged by me, because that's not why I'm here. That's not my mission. And I don't think that that's empowering for anyone. So she's working through that discernment tone of, she was at a birthday party in the summer. And she came to me, and the mom of hosting the birthday party's here and I'm here. And Stella pulls out, because she knows she usually can have nothing in the bag. And so she pulls out this Ghirardelli individual square of chocolate and she goes, look, Mom, this one only has soy lecithin and crystallized. And she goes, 3 ingredients I can't have. Pretty good, huh? And like in her sweet 8-year-old brain at the time, that was like a compliment. And so I look and I'm like, ooh, because the mom's there. And I know that the mom's like, that damn real food mom judging, And so I was just like, oh, I was like, well, that's just lovely. And we get in the car and I'm like, okay, baby. I'm like, so here's the deal. You're going to a good school and you're going to make a lot of new friends. And these past friends that you had, we've established since kinder. And this is like a whole new world, sister. And you don't want friends' moms to be scared of having you over for a play date. Like, we had a real talk. Yeah. Like, let's be real. And so we talk about how to pivot and like basically like downplay versus amplify, right? And so it's like at dance, they had a cookie cake with frosting and a chocolate chip cookie. And Stella said, oh, I'm gluten-free and I don't do food dyes. So the teacher came out with a handful of snacks, like literally like white as a ghost, like something bad had happened. And I'm like, hey, and she's like, Miss Miller, what can I give Stella? And I said, oh, what? And she's like, oh, well, we're having a cookie and she can't have it. And I said, and she's got like, all these things. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh, Pandora's lid. Like, I'm not going to say why we can't have each of those 5 things, right? Like, because then you're like, well, it's not just the gluten. It's also the seed oils. It's also the, And so I just said, oh, is Stella upset? And she goes, oh, well, no, she's just dancing with the girls. And I said, she had an apple and peanut butter before. I'm sure she's fine. Honestly, it's more of a deal to you than to her. She does not I was like, she's used to this. This is fine. And then we went on, right? And then now she's sitting in the cafeteria and she's with 197 4th graders. Mm-hmm. Only 10 of them she's seen bringing their own lunch. The rest of them eat the cafeteria food. And so, like at these long tables, she's like one of the only. And she said, the girls asked me at the table why I never eat the cafeteria food. And she goes, instead of telling them why I don't eat the cafeteria food, I just told them that my mom is like obsessed about food as medicine and she really likes making stuff from scratch. And I was like, yes. But like it was a big amen because girls were like, oh, and they kind of received it and kind of pivoted away and did their thing. had Stella said, because we don't eat kofa meat and we don't, like, can you imagine?
Totally.
Like, she knows sister
Yep.
is like super empowered. And so I'm like, that's the discernment. That's how we deal, long story to answer, with snacks when they're presented. Oh, no, thank you. We have these. We always offer what we have. And we just very politely try to answer in the simplest ways that are not negative sounding, because the last thing we want someone else to feel is shame and or to not be her friend. Like, I'm not going to ostracize her as a child. But at the same vein, I just want to make this point because of the backlash maybe received about that can drive disordered eating. Like, I've heard it all, right? Oh, don't you want your child to fit in? Are your diet principles really worth keeping her left out? And here's my thought on that. We are very committed to the idea that we are in this world, but not of this world. The same in the fact that Stella will not have a cell phone when her friends do. The same in this fact that I hope that she doesn't have premarital sex. The same in the fact that I hope she doesn't bully other friends. She's learning principles and discernment and confidence in being different while still being present in this world. The choice of actually putting her into the public school system so she could amplify that experience at these ages. And I'm good with that as a mom. I think I'm actually instilling values for her to be confident in being different, and it's going to serve her favorably. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I think that's fantastic. I think as somebody whose kids have had social pressures and don't, for eating things that are not what we would serve at home, I think that there is awesome lessons to be taken from what you said. And I also think that it's okay for parents to also go, like, Allie's doing it this way, Christine's doing it this way, Corey's doing it this way. Like, we don't all have to do the same thing, in all the ways. But I think hearing from other people and hearing your experiences and the way you're handling things and can only give us better information and only make us stronger as parents and what we're doing.
And it's not all unicorns and butterflies, I mean, she's cried before. People have said, "Are you eating dog food at camp?" to her, I mean, but again, it's the same feeling she's going to have when she's 16 and a boy's trying to pressure her. It's the same feeling. And so amen to that. Like, yes, that's right, sister. This is what it feels like to be judged and shamed by others. And this is what it feels like to walk in the light. Do it now. Let's keep going. Let's build that fortitude and that resilience. So I'm about it.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
My 11-year-old has actually said, because yes, there's a snack time, I think it's usually at like 10 a.m. or something. And maybe it's even like 9:30, who knows, 9:30 or 10. And he has actually said that he's not hungry.
Right.
Yeah. He's like, I just ate breakfast and I'm not hungry. He's hungry at lunchtime, but he's not hungry at snack time. And everybody comes out at snack time. And I kid you not, it's candy and I'm trying to think, granola bars and muffins and all. And I mean, we have this conversation probably very similarly that you guys talk about this stuff at home as well. But it's like, oh yeah, they're just trying to get their blood glucose levels back up. Like, I'm like, they're sugar crashing. That's why they have to have that.
Yes.
It's like, who knows what they had for breakfast, but it didn't sustain them. And so they got to pick themselves back up to be able to last another 2 hours.
And again, when we're talking about like food freedom and empowering our kids, that's why I can't succumb at this age until my child is victimized by it. And I see that and she tells me that. Then we pivot and redirect and maybe figure something out, right? But I'm not going to disempower her for her to fit in. Like why would I metabolically shake her? That doesn't make sense to me as a parent, because the blood sugar roller coaster, we've been on it, like hangry, irritable, feeling out of sorts, feeling lack of grounding and centered, cognitive decline, anxiety and depression. We see 3 to 5 times more likelihood with dysglycemia. And so like, why? For what? What are we giving them the freedom of and then handicapping them with in their functional experience on the day?
If figuring out what to feed your family feels exactly like a never-ending to-do list, I get it. That is exactly why I created these 3 cookbooks just for you. 1 Chicken, 5 Meals shows you how to stretch a single bird into a week of nourishing, no-stress dinners. Nourishing junk food lets you create your favorites with using real food ingredients, no food dyes, no seed oils, and no other junk, just the flavors that you love. And in betweens, that's the secret weapon for snack time, lunch boxes, and all those what do I even feed them right now moments. All three are kid-friendly, mama approved, and made for real life. Get your copies today and turn your kitchen into a place that you actually enjoy. Go to fornutrientsake.com and use the code MAM15 for 15% off your order. All right, our second code that we're going to share with you is from Seatopia. The code that they have given us is Ancestral Mama, and that's going to get you 10% off. They sell sushi grade and snap frozen fish. So it's frozen at the peak of freshness, and it's all clean, certified clean seafood that is mercury safe and microplastic tested. Check out their website, seatopia.com. Is that right?
It's seatopiafish.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually want to pivot to that
Yes.
because I really, really want to
Yeah.
talk about anxiety. I want to talk about anxiety
Mm-hmm.
in children, particularly in teens, and then also in motherhood. So,
Yes.
So let's talk about food as medicine for anxiety, which I know you have a whole series on. You have a cookbook and a regular book on. Whatever you call that.
No,
not cookbook.
Read.
And so can you explain to parents like how what they are eating, what their kids are eating, what their teenagers are eating really affects their brain chemistry and the moods that they are having?
Yeah. I mean, so again, the blood sugar roller coaster is the first thing that we need to get off and shift to at least a low glycemic diet, so that instead of having these peaks and valleys of dysregulation, which means, really basically we're eating refined processed carbs or high glycemic foods, the pancreas puts out an abundance of insulin to try to prevent a diabetic spike and usually overshoots. And then we drop hypoglycemic, and then we're dealing with hunger, irritability, shakiness, et cetera. And so a lot of the direct moment feedback of anxiety and depression can be correlated to blood sugar, not to mention, like I said, statistically, when we see an elevated A1C, we see 3 to 5 times more likelihood of those conditions. Furthermore, with my anti-anxiety diet, we use ketones as medicine. Again, I believe that if we keep kids in a whole food-based diet and they're focused on getting protein on their plate and eating whole, real forms of carbs, balancing those out with healthy fats, most kids are so metabolically flexible, even if they're consuming 75 grams of carbs within that day, give or take, they're still making ketones, light levels of ketones. And this is important because ketones cross the blood-brain barrier. And if we look in research with medicine, the first acknowledgement of ketosis was through epilepsy management or seizure management. And that is because via crossing the blood-brain barrier, ketones are an inhibitory compound or a substrate that reduces the excitatory surge, which would actually drive like a grand mal seizure. Beyond them being calming on that level of neurological spike, ketones also are GABAergogenic. And so GABA is the primary inhibitory mellower outer for our brain, I think more important in the world of mental health than even serotonin. Both GABA and serotonin are manufactured in the gut. So we look at, of course, probiotics as nature's Prozac. And we see in teens a huge amount of dysbiosis. This is where we're seeing a lot of acne also often, or IBS. But when bacteria or yeast is overgrown in the gut, we actually make more of the excitatory epinephrine, that surge of adrenaline, than we do the serotonin and GABA. Because basically that brain-gut connection is saying, things aren't good. Like things are disrupted down here. And so the body feels like it's in survival mode. So we can get panic attack. We can have some serious clinical manifestation of anxiety in a state of dysbiosis. So oftentimes I will test stool in an individual coming to work with me for mental health, and we'll see pathogenic infections. We will eradicate those, clean it up, work with microbiome rebooting, and we see a huge improvement in mood. We know also that ketones and probiotics actually can make BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which we see trending higher with lower levels, trending higher with depression and cognitive decline. And then we also know that ketones themselves are anti-inflammatory and lower oxidative stress. So when the brain when there's intracranial inflammation or inflammation going on in that space, we're also more susceptible to mental health issues. When we add that compounded with screens and dopamine impact and how blue light jacks our dopamine feedback as well, that only further requires more need for that GABA as that landing gear or that regulator. So I'm a huge fan of chewable bioidentical GABA as a first line defense tool when we are working on rewiring that metabolic flexibility, getting into that light stage of nutritional ketosis and resetting the microbiome, because that can just kind of vent the steam train, if you will, or that buildup, that bottlenecking feeling of stress. It can help with shakiness, dry mouth, and just give a sense of ease without numbing and without sedating. So what's lovely about GABA is it does not cognitively impair. We can actually see improved academic focus. I mean, so it's something that I use from age, honestly, 4 up through adulthood. In my line, it's called GABA Calm, but it is a onset of 10 to 15 minutes from chew and really big, powerful player as we're getting that long-term change of the blood sugar regulation back on track.
So if if somebody were suffering from anxiety or their teenager is, would you highly suggest that they call you or meet to work with somebody? Or is there something that they could do without having to go down that path? Because quite honestly, it can be so hard to find somebody, A, to find somebody, and B, to afford it.
No doubt.
So
no doubt.
is there something somebody could do outside of working with a professional?
And Corey, to be fair on that vein, I like to always say, as a functional medicine practitioner, you can find yourself in just as algorithmic, non-individualized care with a functional medicine practitioner as you can with an allopathic. So it doesn't always mean better, right? And honestly, unfortunately, sometimes there's that VIP model of you have to pay $5,000 to get in the door, and everyone has leaky gut, and there's not that individualized, oh, it's progesterone for you, or oh, it's magnesium for you, and it's just we're going to run this gamut. And this is the protocol.
Right.
And so I do think that a lot of times we can waste our money with the advanced medicine. I think that on our own, anyone can get into ketosis. I would literally be working with my child. I'd potentially get a CGM for them. That's a $175 investment. It looks at 2 weeks of continuous glucose information. The first step would be communicating with the child and using the images of the blood sugar roller coaster in Naturally Nourished Kids, talking about the symptoms of the highs and the lows, following that with your finger with them and asking them if that resonates. Again, because we can't just white knuckle it for them. There has to be that partnership, that understanding. And then if they're oh, and then you can recall, oh yeah, and remember after you went to the Cold Stone Creamery and you had that blah, 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 and then you had a pretty bad freak out on your brother, and you said you felt like you didn't have control of your body, and they're oh yeah, and you're yeah, that's what happened. This was the start, and this is where you ended up, and that, so you can kind of follow with that. I think if there is connection and they get that, the first thing is then starting to drive carbohydrate awareness and keep carbs in check while pairing them with protein or fat. And then from there, we actually give in the book coding of recipes that are keto friendly. And those are 10 grams of carbs or less in those recipes. And then you can even tip your toe into, okay, how does light therapeutic ketosis work? I just shared a study, I haven't posted it yet, but 70% reduction of manic depressive disorder in a ketogenic diet, and impacts were felt at 4 weeks. There's just no reason to not. There's no reason to not try that. And again, the metabolic flexibility, it's not the old school keto that I use. It's not just bacon and eggs and cheese. You can still absolutely get Mediterranean-based foods. I still use raw and filtered honey. I still use banana. So I don't use that yes, no keto list. We're looking at, does my body make ketones when I eat this? It has to do with your muscle mass, your activity factor, your insulin resistance, your own insulin handicap level. and then, of course, your glucose response to foods. And often, interestingly enough, we have glucose responses to stress alone. So that's why keto can be so important. I wore a CGM. My glucose was 75 to 90, maybe even 70 to 90 all day long. 4 p.m., 144. This happened 3 days in a row. And what happens at 4 p.m.? My lovely daughter comes home from school, and I love her. And on paper, she doesn't stress me out. But what it is, and really, no, I deeply love her. We have an awesome relationship. But what it is the incongruency of me as a business owner, medical practitioner, and a mom.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm failing when she walks in the door and I have to finish patient charts and I'm not spiritually, emotionally, physically available for her. That stresses the shit out of me. I feel like a bad person, right? And that's what was jacking my nervous system, creating a fight or flight surge and making me in that snapshot of time a diabetic. And so, it's interesting with like a CGM because you can also see glucose disruption independent of food. And then you can really identify that connection and then try to get ahead of it. So I think that that's a really powerful tool that's pretty cost affordable and doesn't take a medical interpretation. It's like, oh, this was high at this time. Let's try that meal, but cut the carbs in half. Let's try that meal, but double down on the protein. Oh, look, your glucose stayed within 20 points. That looks like that's working for us. And so you're able to use that like real-time information. And then also super cheap is peeing on ketone sticks, like literally like $15 to just see, like, can we get into light levels? And then let's note in a journal for 2 weeks, if we're in the zone, how we feel, how we're responding to stressors differently, how we're sleeping. How does that, are we on the roller coaster still, or are we feeling pretty even keeled? And I think that is one of the biggest changes: carb control, ample protein. And then next level would be if we need to step into ketosis.
So side note on this, our friend Sloan, one of her sons did something like this as a science experiment and like did a whole presentation on it and everything, wore the CGM and then tracked it and then did this whole presentation and board on it. Anybody who needs a science experiment idea or science fair idea,
I love that.
there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I was going to be a supplement manufacturer because when I did my science experiment in 5th grade, I took a Centrum multivitamin and crushed it up into the soil and fed a plant it compared to placebo and saw what it did to the plant.
Wait, did it work? Did it do anything?
Oh, fascinating.
I think it actually turned the leaves yellow, and it was probably like an imbalance of minerals that the plant didn't need. But anyway,
that's so funny.
You didn't use Miracle Grow.
I know, right?
That's so funny.
Hilarious.
See how my mom's vitamin will go in here.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's great.
I think there's probably a lot of parents that are dying to know, are there any foods or ingredients that you personally have found to be the biggest triggers for anxiety in kids?
So I do 5 groups so the anti-anxiety diet breaks into 6 R's of areas to address. And I think it's a really good guide, again, if anyone in the family is dealing with mental health, because we unpack the microbiome, leaky gut, micronutrient deficiency, hormone and adrenals. And so each of those areas, there's a quiz, there's recommended labs. And then the first R, though, of the book is remove inflammatory foods. And so we kind of like, first off, it's like, you got to start here. And then you might need to put the cherry on the sundae with bioidentical progesterone cream. Or there, you might need to address those adrenals because you did evacuate from a hurricane and you're dealing with insufficiency. And so we might need some glandular support or some high dose B5, et cetera. When we're looking at the top 5 that I pull out in the remove, it is going to be sugar. So like we kind of talked on earlier. So refined sugar and being glycemic aware is kind of how I combine those two. Then we look at corn, soy, gluten, and the last one is dairy. And dairy, I hold off, but in the world of, again, mental health, because casein can impact our morphine receptors in the brain, the casomorphin compound, just like gluteomorphin compound, we can see in the mental health world often improvements when pulling out. Now, I haven't seen studies specific on like A2 dairy, right? And, raw milk may be different in that sense. And I always say pull dairy out last because dairy is such a good delivery for protein that I'd rather first start with meeting your protein goals. And then if we're still not moving the needle where we want, that would be kind of that last pillar, if you will. But the corn and soy, I mean, I know not new to your listeners in the sense of just the fact of genetic modification, high amounts of glyphosate, which is a neurotoxin. Both of these also are high in omega-6s, some more pro-inflammatory, sugar because of driving that glucose disruption. And then gluten, not as much in the omega-6 world, but definitely the glyphosate and the fact that gluten can disrupt the epithelial tissue of the gut and be a stressor to the gut. And we just see so much, like I said earlier, microbiome and leaky gut in the mental health issues. And so that's a big area that I hone in on.
You didn't say anything about artificial dyes, and I'm really curious. I'm guessing you mention it, but
Yeah. So in the anti-anxiety diet, I actually don't. I talk about, of course, whole real foods versus processed products. And so it's included in there. In Naturally Nourished Kids, we actually have a table where we break down the food dyes and we put the rename of the past names because they were renamed just last year, even before the MAHA movement. The thing is with foods, and the reason why I don't like to drive my education with what we should not do, not only do I know about the nocebo effect as the author of the anti-anxiety diet and how our negative thoughts will harm us. Like, I don't want to keep saying like, this is going to cause cancer. This is going to cause, this and that. But, that's why they rebranded their names, because the food marketers and the food industry are just going to manipulate based on what we're trying to remove. But we do list all of those. We list the different, health consequences that we've seen research impacted. And a lot of them are excitotoxins. So they will drive more of the ADHD tendency and can drive anxiety. But then what's so beautiful, we take it full food as medicine, and we provide phytocompounds that you can use for coloring. And not only do those not have the deleterious effects, but they have benefits, which is super rad, right? So it's like matcha actually has L-theanine, and L-theanine actually helps your alpha brainwave activity. And so now we can get a benefit of concentration and focus without agitation and anxiety, while we get the EGCG antioxidants to help with metabolism. And so it's just like the sweeteners, right? Like pulling out the ultra processed high fructose corn syrup, replacing with the honey, we're getting benefits. So it's not just a 1-for-1 swap to remove an irritant, we're gaining. So we use smashed raspberries, we use dried fruit powders in the book, beet powder as well, turmeric, of course, for yellow. My daughter's featured recipe in here is Stella's cutout cookies. And I made that after playing with all of the gluten-free paleo recipes on the block and the Bob's Red Mill fava bean fart cookies, and I was like, no, those don't taste good. And just bad textures, honestly. And so her recipe has an entire, I think it's 2 sticks of butter and almond flour. It's a butter cookie, right? I mean, duh. So it's butter,
that's excellent.
Egg, almond flour, baking soda, vanilla, and and it does have honey in it. I think it's a 1/3 cup or a 1/2 cup of honey, but with 2 sticks of butter and the almond flour. And so again, when you look at that ratio glycemically, it's actually fat focused in its macros. And then there's a moderate amount of protein from the eggs and the almond flour, but definitely not a protein rich food, but most definitely a lower glycemic food than any cookie that I've seen. And then the frosting, I do a buttercream frosting classic. That's just one where it's like, okay, this is probably worth bringing in an organic powdered sugar. Again, cost to benefit, heavy whipping cream with it, of course, and or creamed butter. But that's where we bring in those colors of the turmeric or the matcha or the raspberry. Elderberry syrup is also a really fun one we use for pigment as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a tiny bit, because you mentioned it slightly previously, but can you talk a little bit about how screens and blue light affect kids or not just kids, people, and contribute to anxiety and those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, so just EMF alone, so that's the first, I guess, element, because we usually have EMF associated with those said screens. EMF alone, we see that radiation can, especially in children, they are much more susceptible to these devices than we are. Their skull is going to have more penetration than we see. And then what creates more oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is the process we see from EMF. So that radiation stresses the body on a cellular level, and that creates inflammation and it depletes antioxidants. So we run through antioxidants as a mechanism to try to protect ourselves from that stressor of the radiation. And so that in itself, high oxidative stress, inflammation is going to be an issue for mental health, cognition, just optimal health in general. The blue light itself drives dopamine depletion. This is exacerbated with video games, scrolling, anything where we are getting a dopamine high, which just like the blood sugar roller coaster follows a crash. Dopamine is made by the adrenal glands. So we make that epinephrine or that adrenaline. We make norepinephrine and dopamine. Those are the neurotransmitters of our adrenals. And dopamine we think of as like the reward, bliss-seeking compound, but it also plays a huge role in the ADHD world. And it plays a big role with concentration and focus and motivation. And so when we are on these screens, the blue light itself creates dopamine impact in the brain, which we get hyper-focused. We lose proprioception. So proprioception is our awareness of where our body is in space. Like the fact that we don't like run into the door when we're walking through the hallway. And if you're noticing, like kids these days are a lot more clumsy, and we're seeing that actually than maybe we were when we were running across the street to play with friends versus Zooming or FaceTiming our friends, because we had a lot more horizon in our visual than kids do because of the screen. So when you lose proprioception, so that's another element independent of the light itself or the EMF, when you lose proprioception and your relationship of your body in space, we see atrophy in the brain. We see also more of a sympathetic nervous system response, because looking at that horizon creates peace. Like being aware of something bigger versus something that we're so dialed into has more parasympathetic or regulatory impact than we do on a sympathetic driving screen. And then it's the material, which is further insult of what we're looking at, that creates mental health, whether it's body comparison, whether it is violent murder, whether it is video games, whether, you know, and what I think is now such an issue that has come to light in the last couple months really is that I don't think our souls are prepared or able to adapt to, in one scroll, see violent murder, also a conspiracy theory, also a cute puppy, also a recipe. Like that's not reasonable. Our neurochemicals can't, it dehumanizes us. It literally is numbing us from emotion. And that's very concerning when we're talking about mental health, because we can't process that dynamic. That's not life, right? And even the information we're getting on these devices, I was talking to my dad about it, and he was like, you know, it seems like there's just a salmonella outbreak all the time or whatever. And I was like, and like likely, yeah, there's, you know, of course, poor harvesting and yeah, you know, that can be a thing. But I said, but Dad, also like you wouldn't in your newspaper that you received, like literally in our generation, receiving a newspaper, maybe it's like one national paper and one local paper. That was the news. You didn't hear about the local incidents in other states that didn't make the national score. And so now we're worried about so many more things because we're getting real time shock and awe data, and those headlines create monetization, and we're just keeping our amygdala, that lizard brain of fight or flight surge. And so I think it's so multi-factor. I don't know if I've like unpacked them out.
But like, I mean, you're not even bringing in the fact that half the time, like if you're on Facebook, which is usually more personal, usually it's more people that you actually know, opposed to TikTok or Instagram where it's like strangers and influencers. But if you're on Facebook, you're also seeing all of your friends' drama, which you really would not have been aware of unless they told you face to face,
small, intimate,
in real life, which half those things they aren't going to say to anybody's face anyway. So like, you're completely right. I think particularly after the past couple of months, this past week particularly, there has been so much where I'm like, I think I had an idea of we're not supposed to know all of this before.
Mhm.
And then this past week happened, and I was like, no, you're not supposed to see this. People are not supposed to see this.
Right.
We're not supposed to be aware at this level
Yeah.
of all of this.
Yes.
I mean, and this is adults. What about children?
No,
Mhm.
I know.
You
You know
know?
what? I said something to my son who's 14 the other day because some of his friends were talking about it at co-op. I guess we should probably say what this is. Everybody knows what happened with Charlie Kirk, and this is a week after. We're recording
We are
this
recording
a week after.
Yeah. We don't know when this episode will air, but
Right. We are recording a week after what happened with Charlie Kirk. And some of my son's friends were talking about it. He's 14. And I said to him, I was like, hey, do you understand what's happening? And do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said to me, he was like, I don't really want to know. I'm 14. I'm a kid. I don't want to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Yes.
All right. Cool.
like, that's the right answer.
I was so prepared to like have a whole conversation. And he was like, I don't want to know. I'm not an adult. I was like, oh, thank God you don't have a phone.
We're right. We're not able. I just saw a testimony. I don't know if it was Senate or something governmentally on the metaverse glasses, I guess they are, or the
those are terrifying
virtual reality glasses. And they said everyone will be exposed to violence and sexually explicit acts, and that there will be no way to filter it. And it's like,
oh my gosh.
What? Yeah.
And that's what we want.
It's that penetration. And I think to bring it back to food, which I think is helpful, I think a big part of this, and I think I commented on your post, Corey, I think it was like a dinner post or something like that. But, the whole reason why our metabolism is broken, and I believe a big reason why mental health is at the level where it is because we have lost the sovereignty of our food system and also the production of our food system, and the fact of our kitchen table being the hearth of the household and the cornerstone of the household. And, at the table is where we're supposed to have the processing of the day, the download of the events of our intimate community, maybe even some of the big events, right? The prayers, the building each other up, the communal elements of what make us a family. And, in the 50s with the convenience of, because I get asked the question all the time also about what about those that don't have access? And I always say, well, historically, the lower income individuals grew more of their food than the higher, so like, I can't take that. But either way, we were sold convenience so that we could go watch the TV programming. Like that is literally what we were sold. Our parents' generation were sold the canned items, the frozen, the pre-prepared, because then you could go watch the television and see the entertainment. And what that did, though, is it also stole that heavily spiritually, culturally necessity of how we keep our family time sacred, how we nourish emotionally and spiritually. And so just reclaiming the kitchen as the cornerstone of your household is something that people can take home from this, where it's like the kitchen is a screen-free place. The kitchen is a place, maybe exception if a child has to work on the island with their laptop and they're doing homework and they want to be present while you're cooking. Fine. But I'm talking device social. Like this is a place where we have fresh flowers, a record player, and we have peace. We're cultivating peace in our household here. And we're putting time and energy and desire into being here. We're not disdaining the dishes in the sink. We're not, I hate being in the kitchen, because we have to model joy in the process. It has to be desirable, just like mom's eating her broccoli to show that that's good. It's the same way in how we want to spend our time and energy in our home. And so we're not all dissociative in this programming that we don't even know what each other is watching. We are connected. And even just taking that 2 hours from meal prep to meal time back, I think would fix a lot. I really do. And I think that will help our children to be more curious about whole real foods, and it will help them to get more involved. And then hopefully they're more equipped when they go out on their own and they have that desire to do so as well.
Artie Sequeira, I don't know if you guys know who she is. She's a Food Network chef. Really, really cool person. She has a whole cookbook that she's I think it came out last year. and I cannot remember what it's called. Oh, sorry. But if you could look up Artie Sequeira and you could find it. And she wrote this whole cookbook on making your cooking time, your meal preparing time, a sacred and prayerful experience. And it is the coolest. I've not made any of the recipes from it, but I've read the whole thing because it is such a cool, recentering and refocusing and kind of reframing that whole chore, quote marks, chore of preparing food for our families, and turning it into a worshipful act. And I just love that.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, I found it. And actually the title is exactly what you're describing. The title is Unwind, a devotional cookbook for the harried and hungry.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need more of that in this world.
Yeah, if we can just surrender, it could start with surrender. Like when I'm always talking about like the nocebo effect and how negative thoughts can harm us, but positive thoughts can heal us with the placebo. When we're doing something that we know we should do, and I don't mean like shoulding on ourselves in a negative way, but like we know this is good for us, but maybe it isn't desirable actually in our innate space. It's kind of like a fake it till you make it, or at least surrendering to the present. Surrender sometimes is at least impactful because it's not the negative, right? It's not like the grunting and the avoiding and the disdain. Just surrendering to the present and just like finding ease there. And then the peace and the pleasure will find you. But at least if you can at least do that when you are preparing meals, I think that that's the first step.
Yeah.
That's really good
So now I'll
advice.
cook dinner like so cheery today.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do find it like a really great time for myself. And then other times it's like, it feels like a real chore. So I do think, I think your advice on approaching it not as like forcing it to be happy-go-lucky, but just taking in that, I'm not so happy to be doing this right now. And even just admitting that, but like, and just drop it. Cool. Christine, do you have any more questions you want to get to?
I think one more helpful question for parents along the anxiety food train would be, what would you say are the top nutrients or maybe food parents could pay attention to if they want to support a calmer nervous system in their kids?
So first, I'll start macro with protein. I think I've kind of hit that pretty hard, but truly, our prefrontal cortex requires protein for that executive thinking. And so when we are hangry and we are not getting enough protein, I myself feel unhinged. And so, that is the fortitude and the foundation of feeling grounded. So making sure that you are building up your repertoire of protein choice. Those amino acids also make neurotransmitters. So we need an abundance of those amino acids. And then when I'm talking about micronutrients, I would hit with zinc. Again, coincidentally, a lot of these nutrients very richly found in biological protein sourced foods. And that's why it works so well, right? So we think of zinc as an anxiolytic. And so zinc we see in our heme, also iron-based red meats. So like salmon would be fantastic for both zinc and iron. Also red meat like bison or buffalo, grass-fed beef, of course, lamb. That's going to really help to reduce that fight or flight surge in the body. Magnesium would be a big key nutrient of focus. So getting in leafy greens. I have a super greens cube recipe in the book. And so I make those once or every other week. I use those like silicone, big old 2-inch by 2-inch square cubes. And so in the blender is a farmer's market green or something I grew. So it could be like chard or collards. I also put beet greens in there. I put in broccoli sprout and then organic spinach. Blend that all up, like keep packing it all in. And then I pour that into silicone ice cube trays. And then I add in E3 Live, which is a spirulina chlorella blend. So really great. I think we had talked earlier about like detox support. So that's a really fantastic protection against metal toxicity, microplastics, et cetera. You'll hear by influencers, watch out for oxalates. And I just like to say that oxalates also bind glyphosate and microplastics. So, there's a reason for everything in moderation. If it is a whole, real God food, I believe that there's a reason and that it likely will be tolerated and might have net benefit. If broccoli is called by some schools a toxin, or I don't even know what is all said about it, I always say, like, hey, if I see a feeding study where it says you eat this food and your body endogenously, that means in my body produced more glutathione, which is the master antioxidant, which reduces all-cause mortality, then that's the same hormetic stressor as sitting in a sauna. Like, so was it a stressor to me, but it yielded a beneficial outcome? Then that is a superfood, not a toxin. But maybe it did stress me, and that's why I made that thing, but it still has net benefit, and so I'm going to consume it. So we put sulforaphane sprouts in there as well, and that was with my answer of magnesium. And then the last one I would say is cold.
Wait, but then what do you do with them? What do you do with the cubes?
Yeah. So the cubes go in everything. So they can go in a smoothie, most definitely. And that's just easy. Then you're not seeing like your greens go bad in the fridge. That's also why I love having them. Cause it's like, once you have the greens, you just process them into those. Bolognese. So like any like meat sauce, throw a couple super greens cubes in there. And so that's a great way to add in. We can add them into literally any recipe, a curry, a bone broth soup, because it's all pure. It just cream of greens, bone broth soup, 2 of those cubes, 1 jar of fond bone broth, some full fat coconut milk or raw milk. You have a cream of green soup, easy peasy, we put those in a lot of different things, and they are very child friendly. And then you're getting that really rich chlorophyll as well as the magnesium. And then I guess the last nutrient I would say would be choline. So I think folate gets a big, awareness, but choline equally important for neural tube development. It makes acetylcholine, which is a transductor. It's like scaffolding for our nervous system, essentially. So we get richest choline in our egg yolks and liver. So just depending on the age of the child, 1.5 eggs yields around 250 milligrams of choline. And that's what's required for like ages 6 to 8. So as they age, they might need upwards of an average of 2 to 3 eggs is where the adult demands are of choline. But again, it's not the only food source of choline. We do get some choline in our animal products in general. Liver. So if you're making our superfood chicken nuggets, which are a fan favorite, we use an Ancestral blend of chicken with cauliflower, rice, some seasonings, and then they are dredged in almond flour. And we actually just bake those and do them with a turmeric honey mustard dip. Really fantastic. We have a liver pate in here. I think we also have a sneaky bolognese and a couple other ways to get organs into the diet. And so choline rich in egg yolks, organs, and even bacon. I used to travel around in my diaper bag with the Peterson's individual bacon 2-pack. And like anytime
I don't think I've ever seen
is this
that.
like dried bacon?
It's like legit bacon that's just like
is it already cooked?
The pack. No, it's cooked. It's cooked bacon. Yeah.
And carrying around raw bacon.
Cooked bacon, but it's sealed, and so it's like, that would be like when Stella was 2 to 4, it's like, are we having a little bit of a meltdown? You need some bacon. Bacon always helps the meltdown. That's why if I'm to say one powerful thing, feed your kid bacon when they're...
I was about to say, bacon will get me out of a meltdown as well.
Yeah, right?
Right?
Totally.
And bacon's really good when they're sick, honestly, because of, yes, the choline, but also like the electrolytes in it. And I always say, don't force feed kids when they're sick.
Did you just say electrolytes in bacon?
Yeah, totally.
This is the first I have ever heard of this.
What? That makes complete sense because it's got tons of salt in it.
Yeah, sodium, potassium. Yep.
Oh, I did not even think about that. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So
permission to indulge.
Forget your Gatorade and just eat bacon.
Yeah.
Done.
I mean,
Pedialyte, be gone.
The clean, natural electrolyte balance that I like is half an avocado with flaky salt and lemon or lime. That's like the perfect actual balance of electrolytes. So you can get like your high schooler to eat that, and you can add like chili salt or something kind of fun like tahini or whatever.
I thought you were going to say then you add bacon bits to it or bacon.
Well, there you go. Why not?
I literally thought you were going to say grab half an avocado, add some salt, and add some bacon on top. I mean, that is delicious. Let's be honest.
Better, actually. Get that. Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. I know
Now
we're
that
like,
we've made everybody hungry for bacon and
I know.
avocado.
But I want to ask one thing, because I know we haven't necessarily said it, but you've kind of hinted along the way that your book is gluten-free, right?
Yes.
And it is mostly what you're promoting is the like paleo world, the like grain-free stuff. I want to ask specifically because we have had lots of conversations on our show about wheat. And I want to ask you what your thoughts are on it. Do you have you done any of like diving into like freshly milled versus sourdough versus conventional? And what do you have to say about that in our last question?
Love it. So, okay. Back to my doctrine creates disconnect. I was 100% compliantly gluten-free from 2014 until 2024. And
That's kind of
Whoa.
where I was at. Not that long, but it's when I
yeah.
started.
Yeah, I turned 40 last year, and we went to France and Italy, and I was like, I want to see if I can do this thing, like if I can do the Euro gluten, right? And so I started
because
with
that's
like
the thing
big,
people say, right?
Yes.
right? So, and I always would say like, oh, well, it makes sense. You're more parasympathetic. You're more relaxed when you're on vacation. So you have better enzyme production, better hydrochloric acid, like your digestive system is more primed. But also there's not glyphosate toxicity on the gluten grown there. And yes, it's the milling. And so I had, prior to going, because I didn't want to be constipated and irritable during my trip, I wanted to test it before. Like that would be a really bad first test and have it go awry. And then we'd be like miserable all trip, right? And be like, I hate living in my body. So I wanted to test it a couple months before. And so I was looking at stone mill ground flours. Outside of Austin, I love Barton Mill Springs.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
I actually am having their owner on my podcast in the next coming weeks. And so their mission, they only sell glyphosate-free, organically grown heirloom flours. I've been on site and took a sourdough pizza making class with my husband for our anniversary, and have toured their mill. And so when they are stone milling, we are retaining all three parts of the grain intact. And that is very different because, again, the food is medicine, double-edged sword. We're retaining the vitamin E. We're retaining antioxidants. We're getting all of those bioavailable B vitamins in a God food form, right? Not adulterated, not stripped, not refined. Even if we're comparing a King Arthur flour or an organic standard flour, it is still going to be stripped of part of that grain. And so we're losing that nutrient density, and often will then be synthetically enriched. So back to like the rice cereals and the oat, instant oatmeal, the Barton Mill Springs flours are not synthetically enriched, as we would see with many stone ground flour companies. And that's always something I check for, because I like to avoid synthetic enrichment and get that whole form of grain ground down. We keep them stored in the freezer because they will oxidize faster, right? And that's why they have become refined. So that flour wasn't just being eaten by bugs, and we weren't able to keep it in our pantry. But I found that I had really good tolerance. I actually retested, because I'm a science nerd, my TPO. I was like, is it going to put me in a Hashimoto's flare? Like, right. So I observed my gut, looked for bloating, tracked, just didn't like write in a journal, but like watch my bowels to just like see if things changed. And then I had my TPO run, and all looked really good. Went to Europe, tolerated foods, had my sourdough starter culture, and went on the sourdough train. And then I did find myself like 14 pounds higher than I like to be. So I will say, like, metabolically, probably not the best for me and my wellness goals. And so I had to kind of recalibrate, and now my sourdough is sleeping because it was like I had to keep producing, and we're only a household of 3. And I was eating bread 5 to 6 times a week. I do think it's God food. I talk in this book actually about traditional foods, and I make that direct comparison of Wonder Bread to sourdough, and talk about how we're instilling life through the culture, how that also reduces the inflammatory properties of the gliadin and the gluten. And so I think there are benefits, and it can work. It really just depends on your metabolic goals and the fact that it is still a carbohydrate. And so we might want to be mindful of how frequently we consume it, again, based on our own health. in the book, I call out that because many children's guts are damaged, most people in some capacity, if they aren't sipping on broth regularly and they are eating industrialized foods, have some serious gut permeability issues, that I recommend waiting on grains and legumes until about 8 to 12 weeks of doing the Naturally Nourished Kids diet. So you're kind of like doing a little reset for their body. And we do encourage a probiotic rich food 4 times weekly and bone broth 3 to 4 times weekly, whether that's in our bone broth popsicles, our bone broth blueberry smoothie, or our bone broth soups. So I think it's one of those things that, again, if you've healed, your gut is in good integrity, absolutely, that is a whole food. That is a nourishing food. It's just about figuring out the dynamics of your macros and if that serves your metabolic goals. So if someone is dealing with insulin resistance and they're wondering why they're not losing belly fat, it's probably not going to be the best option, generally speaking. A slice of sourdough twice a week probably would work fine. And so now we just buy from our local butcher shop and we just get a frozen loaf. And that's how I'm doing it now. It's like I take out my frozen sourdough loaf. It feels still totally like an indulgence, but I don't feel like I'm wasting food and I have to like force eat it to keep up with my sourdough production. It was like sourdough crackers, it just became a little crazy for me.
Yeah. We did learn in one of our grain episodes that freezing the sourdough bread makes it a resistant starch. So it's better to freeze it.
Glycemically. Yeah. I actually saw that with a CGM. Yep.
Yeah. So
Christine, you have to go.
I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna let you guys close up. But okay. Allie, this was fantastic and so interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Okay.
All right. So as Christine leaves to go get her daughter from school, Allie, do you have anything else that you like burning that you feel like you definitely need to say?
It's like we talked about snacking, we talked a lot about protein, blood sugar, macros. Goodness. I don't have anything that's coming to mind other than, don't allow the perfection paralysis when we're reading Naturally Nourished Kids or we're starting to apply these things. Start with what makes sense. I love the idea of a smoothie as a good entry and, just starting with one area in your day that you can make a direct intentional swap out. So maybe it starts with the after school snack and maybe that's a time that you guys build a smoothie together or you make a recipe together. And then it just kind of expands and grows from there. And you can always find ways to kind of level up and finesse. And so maybe it's adding microgreens, maybe it's topping with a fermented vegetable. And the more you learn and the better you feel in your body, the easier it becomes. Because I think all too often we're coming at a status of mediocrity and then we're wavering from mediocre to shitty. And so like that doesn't stink so much. And that's true for like if we're talking about teens, right? It's like if they aren't feeling well, that's why they don't care about the pizza or the chips or the whatever. So it does take that discipline to get into optimal thrive to say, kind of like my sourdough experience, oh, I can tolerate this, but do I choose to? I still feel food freedom. I just need to recalibrate the frequency that works for my goals. And so when we achieve where that optimal is, then we're often we're going to do whatever it takes to not slide all the way back down to that shitty spectrum because that doesn't feel good. And so I think if we can, as parents, think in that perspective, both for ourselves with our nutrition, but also for our children, where sometimes it takes that tough love to recalibrate. And then we kind of shake things out and see what works best for our families and what types of guidelines of abundance and restriction feel the most sound for us.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, one more question really quick. I think you can probably answer this fairly quickly. What tips, do what you can. What tips do you have for working mothers trying to feed their families well?
So you need to meal plan with your partner. You need to meal plan with your spouse every single week. It's that classic, like failing to plan is planning to fail. It's so true. When we're burned out, nothing gives me more peace than a, Wednesday like today, full of 3 interviews, 2 clinical patients, lab reviews, a social media live, than to know that I have leftovers. That is the biggest okay. And knowing when I wake up tomorrow that we are going to be making, a particular recipe that it's already slacked from the deep freeze. So meal planning is so important, and doing that with your partner, whether it's a husband listening or a wife listening, is so essential as well, because that way we can lay out our week and say, hey, I'm on baseball on Tuesday. Okay, that's the ribeye and Brussels sprouts night. And then, I'll roast some Yukon Golds for the family members that want potato. And then, okay, the Wednesday night is going to be the bison, kale, bacon, meatloaf. And I'm going to actually form that at 6 a.m. before I get the kids up. And that's going to just be ready in the fridge. So we just have to pop it in the oven to roast. And I'm using the sweet potato fries from last night's dinner in that said meatloaf. And the sweet potato fries were with just crispy skinned salmon. Within that, a couple of things I've mentioned are quick sears. Like the thing that when I hear people are too busy, I always say, have you ever seared a steak? Or have you ever seared a protein? Because reality in that sense is 10 to 15 minutes of cook time. It is 5 to 6 minutes. It is salt it, let it sit in the fridge ideally to allow that liquid to retrograde and pat dry, then salt, then put in the fridge. Ideally, but you can do it straight out if you need to. But it's 5 to 6 minutes on one side in tallow, flip it for 4 to 5 on the other, pull it, rest it, slice it. Like there's just, and during that time, you might even roast. We have vegetables roasted 5 ways. We talked about that, like rainbow of color. And so you might even roast sheet pan, fill in the blank. It might be beets with thyme. It might be red cabbage chips. All of that honestly takes 15 minutes of active time. You can change the laundry in between. You can wash your face. I love washing my face after a stressful day. It's like the biggest reset of just like, take it all out of there and recalibrate. And so, any of that, you can take a shower while those are, you can help your child with their homework. But a sear and a roasted sheet pan is the answer, truly. And especially if you have it planned, because then you've slacked that meat and that meat's looking at you. And someone like me, I'm not going to lose that value. It's like, I prepare it because it's
like,
ready.
Oh, it's right. It's thawed. It's got to be cooked.
Yeah.
If I don't cook it, I'm throwing it away. That's $20 down the line.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it comes back to the planning and the preparing, but having a couple 15-minute meals under your tool belt is great. We do give accurate prep time and cook time in the cookbook. I like to call that out because I hate a cookbook that lies to you on that. We are really diligent about our recipe tasters and testers. So, everything should be very accurate in the way that you prepare the dish. And also in that prep time and cook time. So you know what you're getting into when you're meal planning of saying, okay, this is a, higher intense recipe or a quick, easy one.
Yeah, cool. I love that. I will say whenever I write a recipe, I never, ever put how long it takes because I think I'm relatively slow. So like it'll take me longer.
You get distracted.
Yeah, I get distracted or I'm like, I cut up an onion and then I wait another 10 minutes and then cut a carrot. I don't know. All right. I thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I want to give you a little quick shout out because you're going to be speaking at Hack Your Health in November in Tampa. Christine and I are also going to be speaking with a couple of our other friends. So if anybody is available, wants to come to that, it's called Hack Your Health. It's in Tampa in November, and it's going to be a really, really cool event. We know a lot of the other speakers and everybody, the whole lineup, it looks just fantastic. So everybody try and come to that. Allie, I want to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you, the names of your books, where they can find all your books, connect with you if they want to work with you, all that.
Awesome. So you can find me on social. I'm only on Instagram and Facebook under @AllieMillerRD. So it's just ALIMILLERRD. My website is alliemillerrd.com. So we keep it pretty simple. My podcast and YouTube are Naturally Nourished. And then the books that are available are The Anti-Anxiety Diet, The Anti-Anxiety Diet Cookbook, and then Naturally Nourished Kids, which just dropped this September. Also, for your listeners, I will include a link to our free bonus guide. So if you aren't still convinced that you need a copy of Naturally Nourished Kids, even though I think it's a great value at $24.99, you can download our free bonus guide, which has a balancing smoothie worksheet. It has a label lingo, which is really great from like ages 8 through teens, of looking at, first, is this whole food ingredients? What's the carb to protein ratio goals? Am I eating a serving, et cetera? And so that's a really good educational piece. And then there's an entire immune guide, which is really timely as we're already entering in that season. So I'll put that link, and that can maybe be in the show notes so people can check that out too.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me do the quick where you can find Christine and I. So Christine is over at Nourish the Littles. I'm at For Nutrients Sake. Our show is at Modern Ancestral Mamas. That is all on Instagram because that's the only platform Christine and I use. You can find the show also on YouTube and Apple and Spotify. If you ask questions on YouTube, we usually can get to those. And if you leave reviews and stuff like that on Apple and Spotify, that really, really helps our podcast to do well. It helps other people to see it. It helps it to rank with, all that algorithm stuff. And if you would share it with a friend on YouTube, on whatever socials you want to, or just text it to them, all of those things is basically like a free way of supporting Modern Ancestral Mamas. And the other way to support us is to use the links and codes that we have in our ads. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Go buy Allie's book. It's called Naturally Nourished Kids. And I hope to see you guys at any of the upcoming events that we're at, and to connect with you online. So thank you so much for listening. Bye.